Welcome to Build Strong Habits podcast channel. Sit back, relax, take your eyes off the screen, and listen. Just listen to this audio podcast, and let's start building habits that transform our life.
All right, get ready for this one, because today we're diving deep into The Bicycle Thief.
A true classic.
This film isn't just some old movie,
Yeah.
It's considered one of the greatest films ever made.
Absolutely. And the thing is, it was made way back in 1948.
Back in 1948. But even after all these years, it just grabs you.
It really does.
Still has that power to move people,
Just challenge audiences.
Yeah, and make them think.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how they do it. It's through this style called Italian neorealism. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yeah. It's really something. Instead of those big Hollywood sets and huge movie stars, they just throw you right into the streets of Italy after World War II.
Wow.
Yeah, it's gritty and raw.
I can only imagine.
And let me tell you, it hits you hard emotionally.
That makes sense. I mean, that's exactly what the director, De Sica, was going for, right?
You wanted to show what it was really like.
To show the real struggles that everyday people were going through.
People just trying to make it in a society that had been wrecked by the war.
So no sugarcoating at all.
Not-
Not even a happy ending.
Nope, just straight up reality, unfiltered.
Wow. So let's talk about Antonio, the main character.
Hmm.
This guy is desperate. I mean, he needs work. He needs to take care of his family. And finally, job comes along. But of course, there's a catch.
Always a catch.
What is it?
He needs a bicycle.
He needs a bicycle to do this job.
He does. And you see, for Antonio, it's not just about getting around town.
It's more than that.
Way more. This bike represents his chance to get out of being poor,
It's why.
to take control of his life. And when that bike gets stolen, it's like the universe is saying, nope, not gonna be that easy.
So what do? They need this bike, right?
Well, he and his wife, they make a tough decision.
What do?
They pawn their wedding sheaths.
Their wedding sheaths.
Their most valuable possession.
I mean, talk about sacrifice.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge.
It really is, just to get this bicycle.
But they get it, and for a little while, there's this glimmer of hope.
Yeah, I bet.
But then, boom! On his very first day of work,
What happens?
the bicycle is stolen.
No way.
Yeah, and the audience, we feel that loss too, just like Antonio does. You just saw what he went through. All that hope riding on that bike.
Yeah, like a punch in the gut, right?
Exactly.
So what does he do?
Well, he's got to find it. So he goes on this desperate search
All over the city.
all over Rome
Wow.
with Bruno, his young son, right by his side.
And that father-son relationship, man, that really got to me. You see this little boy watching his dad fall apart.
It's heartbreaking.
Like another layer of heartbreak on top of everything else.
It is. There's this scene where Antonio takes Bruno to a restaurant.
To a restaurant.
Keep in mind, these guys are broke. They're struggling.
So this isn't like a celebration.
No, not at all. It's more like Antonio's trying to hold on to some kind of normalcy to show Bruno that even when things are terrible, there's still love.
That's really powerful.
It is.
It's like such a small thing, but it means so much.
You got it.
So they're going all over trying to find this bike, and they meet all kinds of people.
Right.
Churchgoers, right?
Yeah, offering false hope.
A fortune teller, too, right?
Yeah, taking advantage of people's desperation.
And the black market.
She's all there.
It's like you get a glimpse of what Italian society was like right after the war.
Absolutely. And each encounter really highlights the desperation. It's like poverty is this trap. It's pushing people to the edge. You see the choices Antonio's making.
Like you might even steal a bike himself, right?
Exactly. The system itself is almost forcing people into these desperate situations.
It's like that saying, desperate times call for desperate measures.
It really makes you think.
It does. How far would any of us go to provide for our families? Would we be willing to cross that line?
To compromise our own morals.
Oh, right.
That's the power of this film. It throws these really tough questions at you. It's not just a story. It's a reflection of society.
It makes you think.
It does. And it's not just the story, it's how they tell it. De Sica, he's a master at using the visuals to really make you feel the emotion.
Oh, I totally agree. The way he uses Rome, it's amazing. It's not just a background. It's like Rome's a character in the movie.
Exactly. And remember, this is the real Rome, like right after the war, not some fake set in a studio.
Right.
You see these crowded streets, these markets packed with people, these neighborhoods that are just falling apart.
Yeah.
It all adds to that raw feeling, that authenticity.
You really feel like you're there.
Yeah, because it was filmed there. You're right in the middle of it all, the chaos and the poverty. You can practically feel the desperation in the air.
And DeSica uses these, well, they're simple techniques, but they're so powerful, like those close-ups on the actors' faces.
Oh, yeah.
You see every little bit of hope, every moment of despair.
It's like you're right there with them.
You feel it all.
You do.
You mentioned simple techniques, and one thing that really stuck with me was there's no music.
Oh, interesting.
At first, it feels kind of weird,
Yeah, it's unsettling.
but then it pulls you in.
I know what you mean.
It's like DeSica is saying, hey, listen to the city. Listen to what's going on around you. All that traffic noise, the conversations in the background, it becomes part of the story.
It's like the silence itself is speaking.
It's so powerful.
It really adds to the realism.
So we've got this gritty realism, this stark style, but the bicycle thief is also making a statement about society.
Oh, absolutely. It's holding a mirror up to Italy right after the war. You see the poverty, the unemployment, and all that unrest that's just simmering below the surface.
And it's not shying away from any of it.
Nope.
It doesn't hold back, but it's not preachy about it either.
No, it's not over the top.
It shows it like it is.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it even more powerful.
And that's why it's such an important film. It was a perfect example of Italian neorealism, this whole movement to ditch the old Hollywood way of doing things.
So no more fancy sets.
No.
No more happy endings.
No more fairy tales, just real stories told honestly.
And it's amazing to think about this simple film made on a small budget. It became famous all over the world.
It did. It even won an honorary Oscar in 1950.
That's a big deal.
A huge deal. And its influence was huge, too. It inspired so many other filmmakers to start telling these down-to-earth stories.
About real people, real problems.
Yeah, just everyday people.
It's like it reminded everyone that movies don't always have to be about escaping reality. They can make you think about the world.
To connect with other people.
To understand what it means to be human.
Exactly. And that's what makes it a masterpiece. It goes beyond time, beyond cultures, and it speaks to everyone.
Anyone who's ever been poor, lost a job, felt that desperate love for their child, they can understand this story.
That's it.
And what I find really interesting is how the movie ends. There's no big resolution, no easy answers.
It leaves you hanging.
It does. You just get this feeling of, I don't know, it's like sadness, but maybe hope too.
It's hard to explain.
It is. Think about that last scene where Antonio and Bruno are just walking away. They disappear into the crowd. It sticks with you.
Haunting, isn't it?
It really is. What happens to them? Do they make it? Do they give up? We don't know. Sika doesn't tell us.
He wants us to decide.
It's like he's saying, here's their story. Now you figure out what it means.
I like that.
And that's actually more powerful than any perfect ending could be.
Much more.
It makes you confront the messiness of life, you know. There aren't always easy solutions. Sometimes it's all about the journey.
And that's such a powerful message.
Especially nowadays, when everything seems to be about instant gratification and easy answers.
I agree. That's why this film is so important. It makes you think, it makes you feel, and it stays with you.
You know, as we're wrapping up our look at The Bicycle Thief, I'm left with this feeling of, I don't know, it's like a mix of sadness but also hope.
That's a good way to put it. You see all that hardship and desperation, but then you also see how strong people can be, how love and connection can help them through the tough times.
Like when Antonio washes Bruno's feet after they've been walking around all day. It's just this little thing, but it says so much about how close they are.
It's a beautiful moment, with a little bit of tenderness and all that darkness,
Yeah.
and it gets to the heart of what the film is about.
What's that?
Empathy. Compassion. DeSica wants us to see the people who are struggling, to recognize that they have dignity, that they're worthy of respect.
And that message is so important, especially now when we see so much inequality, when people are so quick to judge those who are struggling.
Absolutely. The Bicycle Thief reminds us that we're all in this together. The problems that one person faces can affect the whole society.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
It does.
So as we finish up this deep dive, I'd like to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay.
How does The Bicycle Thief make you think about the choices people have to make when they're facing poverty and desperation?
Yeah.
What would you do?
That's a great question. And I'd add, how can we, each of us, and as a whole society, work to create a world where those kinds of impossible choices are less and less necessary?
Powerful stuff to think about.
Definitely.
And for anyone listening who hasn't seen this film yet, you really need to check it out. It's one of those movies that stays with you. You'll keep thinking about it, turning it over in your mind long after it's over.
It's a true masterpiece, timeless and universal. It speaks to something deep inside all of us.
Well, thanks for joining us on this cinematic journey.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Build Strong Habits. Let us know in the comments how you feel about it and what topics you'd love to hear next. Always remember, we're here to build strong habits together.